15 years into our marriage, and we never had children of our own. Emma, my wife, had already been through one divorce when we met and brought 2 daughters into our relationship. I stepped into the role of a father figure for them long before Emma and I officially became husband and wife. From my perspective, our marriage wasn't perfect, but the issues we faced were the usual ones, nothing out of the ordinary. We took pride in how openly we communicated with each other, whether it was venting about work, discussing intimacy, or simply sharing our thoughts. Many nights were spent curled up on the couch, getting lost in conversations about life and philosophy. I believed we had a strong emotional bond and a fulfilling, passionate private life. We both made an effort to stay in good shape and maintain a healthy lifestyle. I work in healthcare, and lately, the long hours and overtime have become the norm. Emma had recently taken up a role in legal consultancy and, for the past 5 months, had been working from home. That shift added a bit of distance between us, but we still found comfort in spending our days off together. Just last night, I changed the air filter in our Dyson fan located in the bedroom. My phone was charging near the front door, so I asked Emma if I could use hers to update the app and reset the filter alert. When I picked it up, I noticed she had activated a pattern lock. That struck me as odd, but I let it go without comment. While navigating through her apps, a Snapchat notification popped up. The message was brief but jarring. "I'll bring the special toy." I froze. The words were plain enough, yet my mind seemed to stall, unable to fully grasp what I had just read. After a few moments of silence, Emma asked if something was wrong. I couldn't respond immediately. I was still staring blankly at the fan. She goes on mandatory business trips every quarter, traveling 2 states away for 5 days. It dawned on me that the message was likely tied to her upcoming trip this Monday. I've spent years lurking on Reddit, silently reading hundreds of stories like this. I never imagined I'd be the one sitting dazed on the bedroom floor, stunned and chilled to the core. Eventually, I managed to mumble something about checking the IP and router details for the app connection. The day before, she had used my Chromebook to log into Facebook. I made the split decision to take a week off. My supervisor, who happens to be a close friend, was understanding once I explained what I discovered and why I needed time away. I stayed up all night going through Emma's messages. She had just left for the office when I decided to dive into her Google location history. My paranoia was spiraling, and it was hard to even face my own reflection. Emma had no idea I saw the Snapchat notification. I was able to access Verizon's messaging platform by logging in under her name and phone number. What I found left me speechless, more than 1,500 messages dating back to February of the previous year. The contents ranged from texts and memes to flirtatious photos, and yes, even explicit ones. She stopped using the Verizon messaging app around 3 months ago, but the communication didn't end. They simply transitioned to Snapchat for more privacy. I don't use social media, so I was completely in the dark. Recently, I discovered that logging into Snapchat doesn't require Facebook, just an email and a password. She used my Chromebook for that too. Only 3 nights ago, while I was drifting off to sleep as she lovingly rubbed my back, she was actually messaging him, flirting, and sharing intimate content. He's a younger colleague from her workplace, married with 3 small children. I've met the guy twice. I even shook his hand. Now I find myself wandering through the house I personally designed and built for her, lost in disbelief. My emotions swing between a hollow numbness and a burning fury. When I finally accessed Snapchat, everything became horrifyingly clear. I called my best friend. He's been through 3 divorces himself and has a track record of questionable partners. Still, he gave me a solid recommendation for a tough-as-nails lawyer. I've already decided to gather and preserve every piece of evidence. There are photos of them being intimate, and I wouldn't be surprised if videos exist too, either stored on her phone or in her possession. I keep wishing this were just a horrible nightmare. What's perhaps even more painful than the betrayal is the way she spoke about me to him, mocking my vulnerabilities, exposing my insecurities, and telling him that she loves him. Their bond appears to be purely physical, with no indication of a long-term plan. That fact is both a relief and an additional wound. She's risking our entire life together for something so temporary. She knows very well that infidelity is my ultimate boundary, the one thing I could never forgive. Whenever she travels for these quarterly meetings, we follow the same routine. I take her to the airport, and we always share a long, affectionate farewell. But now, I can't even bear to think about doing that. My friend suggested I print out everything and see if there's any way to retrieve deleted Snapchat messages, though I've learned that's nearly impossible without access to her phone. Today, I have a meeting with the lawyer. I paid a steep price to secure an urgent appointment, but I need to get the legal wheels turning. I'm also seriously considering flying out to the same hotel where Emma will be staying, just to catch her in the act. Since I have access to her hotel booking system, I've added myself as an emergency contact. This way, I can get a room key without alerting her. I'm planning to log into the messaging platforms once I get to town and witness everything unfold as it happens. If I could manage to get the divorce documents prepared in time, I'd hand them over to her personally. Since that's unlikely, I'll settle for leaving her with a 600-page printed PDF instead. Interestingly, her lover's wife accepted my friend request on Facebook. I'm toying with the idea of sending her all the proof. Right now, I'm mapping out my moves carefully, trying not to give up any leverage. The plan is straightforward. Fly in Monday afternoon, sign into the messaging apps to monitor their chats, and use my reservation to get a key to my wife's room. I'll leave the packet in there along with my wedding band, and then wait at the bar, watching my phone for the inevitable fallout. I intend to call the man she's been seeing and ask him to bring my wife down to the bar. That's when I'll tell him that an identical packet is already en route to his own wife by certified mail. Simultaneously, I'll send her a message through Facebook. It feels childish and vindictive, and yet I'm overwhelmed by a need to scream out in frustration even as I feel completely powerless. This morning, all I could manage before she left was a quick peck on her cheek. I couldn't even bring myself to meet her gaze. Somehow, I have to survive this weekend. I keep questioning whether this revenge-driven scheme is even worth it. Right now, it feels like I'm just trying to transfer the emotional anguish I'm drowning in. No apology could change anything, because to me, this act is the ultimate betrayal. I'm torn. Do I confront her tonight, or wait to catch her in the moment? I'm also considering going silent on this, shutting off social media forever. What I truly want is to be with someone who values loyalty and honesty as deeply as I do. By the way, I came across a very specific item. We already own a chest full of bedroom toys, but this one had been packed into her carry-on. It's a high-end remote control device, the kind you operate with a phone app. It looks expensive. Later on, I met with my lawyer. Surprisingly, she was not only professional, but showed real empathy. She made it clear that her role was to defend my interests in this battle for my future. My responsibility was to be honest and not complicate her job. Afterward, I went to a print shop to get the documents ready. The full-color print job cost me $420. I wanted the pictures to be vivid. A nod to Chris at the print shop, who didn't make a fuss when explicit images began printing. He asked about it, and when I gave a brief explanation, he looked stunned but respectfully shook my hand and offered his sympathies. When I got home, I crashed for 3 hours. Emma walked through the door around 7:30, her usual time. I asked if there was anything she wanted to get off her chest. She mentioned nothing beyond the current political election. Then she looked at me and asked what was on my mind. Tears were welling up inside me, but I couldn't cry. It was like my emotions were trapped inside, screaming. I looked at Emma and asked why there was a remote control intimate device in her suitcase. Her reaction said everything. Her face turned ghostly pale, her breathing quickened, and sweat started to form on her forehead. She looked absolutely panicked. I pressed further. Who had the app and control code? She started stumbling over her words, and the tears began to flow. I pulled out 3 folders containing their text messages and asked if the other woman, the man's wife, had access to the app. Emma broke down further, insisting she could explain. I gave her 5 minutes. She couldn't explain. I told her to leave. She shouted that it was her house too. I replied that maybe it was, but if she stayed, I'd make sure everyone knew what she had done, friends, family, even the girls. Or, she could choose to leave now and figure out another place to stay while she was away at her work conference for the week. She was stunned and silent. I opened her Facebook page and pulled up the profile of the other man's wife. I asked if she wanted to tell her the truth or if I should do it myself right now. Emma collapsed into sobs, begging, claiming she still loved me and that things were never meant to go this far. My favorite part? When she said I couldn't do this. I looked her in the eyes and said, "It looks like I already have." Then I hit send on the message to the other wife, attaching the full file documenting their betrayal. I began the message with a sincere apology and a short explanation. I haven't heard anything back yet. Then I started flipping through the printed pages, reading random snippets aloud to Emma. One of them stood out, where she had written, I just wish we could spend the day attached to each other. Just you inside of me. You have stirred something in me far deeper than I ever imagined possible with anyone else." Emma continued to cry, desperate for a conversation about our relationship, convinced that we could overcome what she called a mistake. But I was brutally honest with her. I made it clear that I would never find it in me to forgive her, that her promises had become meaningless, and that she had shattered nearly 2 decades of our shared life. "I'm still considering whether I should report her behavior to HR, and one thing I know for certain, I'm going to make sure everyone knows how she chose to end our marriage with betrayal." I told her not to return after her trip. Right now, I'm sending out friend requests and trying to get everyone synced with my page. That's how I'll share the details with everyone. I've decided to wait until morning to call the girls. I've raised them since they were 11 and 6. They're now grown women, 28 and 23. I have no clue how to even begin this conversation or how to navigate this storm with them. I'll give a fuller picture of how we got here, hoping it helps explain the storm inside me. My original post was a messy vent, full of emotion and not very coherent, just like I felt when I wrote it. I started college in Las Vegas during the mid-90s and graduated in 1999. That period of my life was wild in every sense. I was living freely, enjoying every moment, and not exactly living quietly. It was during this phase that I decided marriage wasn't for me. I saw it as a restrictive institution that stripped people of their freedom, and I was adamantly against having kids. After getting my nursing degree, I quickly found success in cardiovascular intensive care. I moved back to Texas in 2001 and continued my education to become an advanced practice registered nurse, specializing in cardiovascular surgery. Eventually, I set my sights on medical school and adapted my academic path accordingly. That's when I met Emma, the woman who would later become my wife. She was short, curvy, what people now call thick, and bursting with energy. We met during a high-pressure medical emergency, and the chemistry between us was immediate and powerful. Our relationship took off like wildfire, and within 3 months, we were already saying we loved each other. Emma had 2 daughters, and although I had always imagined a child-free life, I found myself entering a completely different reality. She had been divorced for about 2 years and had recently ended an unstable on-and-off relationship. We dated for around 2 years, and during that time, she gradually introduced her daughters to me. One evening, she sat me down for a candid and mature conversation about our future. She explained where she stood, what she wanted, and what she expected from me or any long-term partner. It came down to a decision, either commit to marriage or part ways. At that point, I still wasn't sold on marriage, but she respected my hesitation. She gave me the time and space to seriously think about what we had and where we were going. She made a solid argument. We lived together, had listed each other as emergency contacts, and often joked that the only thing missing was being on each other's insurance. It was a real conversation, and we agreed to stay together a while longer, though I knew a choice would need to be made soon. Just 2 weeks later, I received an acceptance letter from a medical school about 2 hours away. I was elated. I had just turned 26, and this was a dream come true. But as the reality sank in, I began to feel overwhelmed. The thought of being apart from Emma and the girls gnawed at me. Medical school, followed by residency and a fellowship, would mean 7 grueling years filled with debt, sacrifice, and very little time for family. I weighed everything and made the painful choice to turn it down. Instead, I enrolled in a master's program in nursing administration. That same year, in July 2003, we got married in a small ceremony attended only by close friends and family. My parents have always adored the girls, understandably so, but they've kept their distance from Emma. When I told them on Monday about her betrayal and that the girls might no longer be a central part of our lives, they revealed something that shook me. They confessed that they had always believed Emma came with too much baggage because of her past and felt she pressured me into compromising my dreams. And as much as it hurt to hear, I couldn't ignore the ring of truth in their words. After completing my studies, I realized that working in hospital management wasn't the right fit for me. I'm a good-looking guy who thrives on patient care. The hospital where I worked offered a certification in ECMO and the chance to become a perfusionist. It was an extremely competitive program, but I got accepted. Over the past 11 years, I've dedicated myself completely to ECMO and everything that comes with it. The journey has been nothing short of overwhelming, filled with both emotional hurdles and sorrow. Around 5 years back, Emma came to the conclusion that her time working as a registered nurse in a hospital had run its course. She craved a more conventional routine, something less stressful and detached from patient care and the daily hospital grind. Thanks to a connection, she secured a job at a legal consulting firm operating across several states, one that focuses on medical-related lawsuits. Her new role involved extracting information from patient records and compiling it into usable summaries. 2 days after I uncovered her infidelity, I found myself in a dark place emotionally. That Saturday morning, I barely slept, plagued by heavy, troubling thoughts about my future and everything that had unraveled. In the kitchen, as I prepared a simple breakfast of eggs and toast, Emma walked in, still groggy from sleep. She asked me if I could make her a plate as well. Instead of responding with words, I tossed my food into the trash right in front of her. Afterward, I turned on my record player and played loud music from my younger years, partly to drown out any attempts she might make at conversation. I admit it was immature, but I was spiraling. I began combing through the printed messages between her and the other person, reading each one in order. It's a double-edged sword, something I'd urge others to approach with caution. By the afternoon, I'd switched the soundtrack from aggressive punk bands like Black Flag and Danzig to heart-wrenching tunes by artists like Chris Isaak and Ray LaMontagne. When Emma came to me again, her tone had shifted. There was frustration in her voice. She wanted to know what I thought I had achieved by informing the other man's wife. I told her that I believed the woman deserved to know the truth. At least she would have the chance to make a well-informed decision about her own future, instead of blindly giving herself to someone who didn't value her. It appeared my message had reached the wife, and the fallout was significant. Emma lowered herself onto the couch, tears beginning to spill. With a softer voice, she asked what else I planned to do. I told her plainly, my goal was to dismantle her life, to ensure she felt the same pain I was enduring. If she had any love or respect left for me, I asked her to hand over her phone and show me everything. She declined, claiming it wouldn't help and that I'd only use the information against her. I explained that part of me, a part that needed closure, just had to know. Still, she refused and retreated to the guest bedroom. Later, I found documents related to her employment, HR forms, and onboarding details. I discovered her company had a compliance hotline, so I made the call. I left a message outlining that she and the other man had shared protected client information through an unsecured, unauthorized communication channel. I added that she had been his supervising manager on 2 separate projects during the time they were sending explicit messages. I also informed them that both had used their company-issued phones to exchange inappropriate content, including photos and videos. That was a significant breach of company policy. Throughout my life, I've always viewed myself as a composed, logical person. But this entire situation has pushed me to the edge. That evening, I continued spreading the truth to our circle of family, friends, people who needed to know. I reached out to a doctor friend and arranged for a full checkup and a screening for any potential infections. He had several questions, and I answered them honestly. By around 8 in the evening, the 3rd day after discovering everything, I was exhausted. I decided to take a drive to see the girls. They live about 3 hours away. My feelings toward them have grown more intense since all this began. We've developed a respectful and friendly rapport, but not quite a parent-child dynamic. Especially with the older daughter, our interactions are polite, but there's always a sense that I'm not her real father. The younger one is a bit more open, though the distance grows when they're both together. I left early on Sunday morning, around 5, and arrived at their place just after 8:40, carrying fresh coffee and collages. They were instantly anxious about their mom. Before they could ask too many questions, I gave it to them straight. I explained the situation and told them that their mother would likely be moving out within the next 3 months. It was the kind of conversation that needed to happen face to face. I laid everything out. They were clearly disappointed in her. I emphasized that I wasn't trying to force them to take sides. They're adults navigating a complex situation, and if they chose not to maintain a relationship with me, I would be saddened, yes, but also somewhat at peace. I told the girls that whatever was happening between me and their mother, or not happening, shouldn't impact their connection with their grandparents, my parents. They both agreed they still wanted to stay in touch with them. After that, I left their place around 11 in the morning and drove home. On the way, I made a stop at my best friend's house, where I let myself break down a bit. I had poured so much of myself into raising those girls. Their dad had been absent most of their lives, eventually settling down and starting a new family nearly 6 hours away. Seeing the state I was in, my best friend decided I'd had enough to drink over the last 72 hours and needed rest. I crashed at his place that night. While I was there, I noticed that Emma had been blowing up my phone after I left the girls' home. When I got back home around 8 in the morning, I was surprised to see her Porsche still parked outside. For a second, I thought maybe she had taken a ride share to the airport, but that wasn't the case. She hadn't gone anywhere. Instead, she was awake and had made breakfast. She asked me to sit down and eat with her. I did. When she asked how it tasted, I told her honestly, it tasted like nothing, like static. I said everything had felt muted lately, overshadowed by the bitterness and fury I couldn't shake. She had been home the entire past 5 days, calling in sick and skipping her quarterly work trip. She tried to open a conversation, saying she was worried about me and still loved me. She also mentioned her oldest daughter had called the day before, deeply unsettled by what she had witnessed. I let out a laugh, but it was hollow, unsettling even to me. I shot back, sarcastically questioning her love. I pointed out how that love had translated into a year and a half of deceit. A love that tossed aside nearly half of my life. In a haze of frustration, I went to the liquor cabinet and grabbed the Glenfiddich bottle. There was about a third left. I drank it all. I mockingly apologized for not offering her any, adding that she didn't deserve it. I then went into our bedroom and started taking down every photo and memory of us. I laid them all out on the kitchen table. When I was done, she had already left the house. Soon after, I got a call from my attorney's paralegal. The divorce papers were ready. I had to review and sign them before they could proceed with filing. Still feeling the burn of the scotch, I skimmed through the documents, signed them, and sent them back. Later that day, I received a message from the other man's wife. Her tone was reluctant, but she thanked me for opening her eyes, however painful it was. She didn't want to speak further, but she informed me that she had uncovered messages and videos of him with multiple other women. She had kicked him out and was now planning to meet with a lawyer. I spent the rest of that evening with music and more drinks. I passed out around 4 in the afternoon. I heard her coming around 10 that night. She broke down crying when she saw the table covered in old photos and memorabilia from our life together. I hurled insults at her, reminding her that none of this happened by accident. Every step, every lie, every secret message, it was all a choice. I was drunk and bitter, my words harsh and cruel. She lit candles and begged me to stay with her. I picked up my phone, turned on the camera, and told her to repeat what she had said. Despite everything, she still didn't believe I was finished with her. So I gave in. I went through with it and recorded the entire encounter. Afterward, I was consumed by a storm of emotions. Part of me still longed for her, but it was too painful to even think about being together again. We fell asleep in the same bed. I woke up with a pounding headache and couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. Later that day, I had an intense 2.5-hour therapy session. I didn't know she had followed me there. She confronted me outside, asking what I was doing. I told her I was finally getting help, therapy for the emotional wreckage left behind by someone who couldn't even explain why she betrayed me. I was loud, emotional, and on the verge of tears. My new therapist saw the whole thing unfold. I let the rage out. I called her every name in the book and admitted that in my darkest moments, I wished she no longer existed. The session was draining, and the therapist ended up prescribing some medication to help me cope. We set another session for Thursday. We dug into my pain, everything from the sense of betrayal to the blow to my confidence as a man. I opened up about my fear of what lies ahead. Just a week ago, I felt whole. I had direction, dreams, and a partner I believed I could count on. Now, I felt like a drifting vessel, stripped of purpose, powerless, and completely lost. He began to help me unpack the root of these emotions. It wasn't just a single question that the therapist had me consider. It was a sequence of deep, soul-searching reflections. The most striking piece of advice was to calmly ask my soon-to-be ex-wife what it was within her that made it possible for her to hurt me like this. He also suggested setting firm boundaries for any potential physical contact, urging me to avoid it entirely unless my ultimate intention was to reconcile. I broke down during the session, crying and seething with anger, and by the end, I was drained to the core. She was still outside waiting when the session ended. I walked past her, ignoring her desperate attempts to talk, and made my way straight to a doctor's appointment for a standard health checkup. After giving him a brief overview of the situation, he cautioned me to reduce my alcohol intake and use sedatives sparingly. I picked up some groceries on the way home, deciding to finally follow the advice from both my therapist and my physician friend: eat properly and stop drinking. As I stepped into the house, I found her in the dimly lit living room. She sat there, sipping wine, shuffling through old photographs, lost in them. She wore a dress clearly meant for a night out, her makeup streaked from crying. As she reached out to embrace me, I gently pushed her away and purposefully took out my phone, pressing record. With fresh tears streaming down, she revealed that the wife of the other man had called and exposed him for being unfaithful not just with her, but with other women too. She called herself a fool and admitted that the harsh words I'd used to describe her now seemed justified. She pleaded with me to give us another chance. I asked her why she didn't consider us when she was betraying our marriage. Her apologies felt empty, as though they were driven more by the fear of consequences than by genuine regret. I told her I believed she was more devastated about having to start over than about truly losing me. I continued, calmly informing her that I had contacted the corporate compliance office and outlined the policies she had violated. It felt like a surge of emotions, relief, fury, and sorrow, all colliding at once. Afterward, I put away the few groceries I'd purchased and fixed myself a small sandwich. I went to bed feeling drained and numb. She hadn't left, still lingering there. I took out my phone again and began recording as I shared what the therapist had said about boundaries and physical space. In the 15 years we'd been together, I had never once turned down her advances, but now I asked her to move to the guest room. She refused, so I decided to sleep elsewhere. That night left me hollow. The emotional weight was unbearable. Even after a modest meal, the numbness lingered. Once again, I tried to rest, but her presence persisted. I recorded our talk once more, repeating my request that she sleep in the guest room. Her refusal left me with no option but to leave the room myself. I reiterated that she had turned away from our love and commitment 2 years ago, and I reminded her of my report to the compliance office, along with the specific rules she had violated. I kept my composure outwardly, but inside I was shaking. In the morning, I slipped out quietly and started doing some light exercise to clear my head. My focus now has shifted to job hunting. I've been updating my resume and sending out applications. There's a realistic chance I could be relocating to Portland before the year ends. As much as I love my parents and will miss being near them, I know I need to leave this city behind. The idea of unexpectedly running into her after all that's happened is something I just can't stomach. I have to escape from this place and erase every trace of the heartbreak and sacrifices I've endured. The sky was gray, and the rain fell off and on throughout the day. I met up with my best friend for an early dinner and filled him in on everything. For once, we chose not to order any drinks. My lawyer reassured me that moving away wouldn't jeopardize the financial agreement, which came as a welcome relief. I'm planning to use my paid time off to get through until late October and dip into my portion of our cash savings to fund the relocation and settle into my new place. Even though I make an effort to laugh at my friend's jokes, it feels forced. There's a heavy emptiness dragging at me, something I've never felt this strongly before. Recently, I've caught myself lost in disturbing thoughts, vivid daydreams about what life might be like if I simply weren't here. I intend to bring all of this up with my therapist tomorrow. My soon-to-be ex-wife has been secretly going to the library, using Google location tracking to monitor my movements, pretending to be unwell while still showing up for work meetings. She's been spending her nights in bed just like she has the past several evenings. I keep wrestling with a mix of resentment and sorrow, wondering whether true forgiveness is even possible, or if I can ever emotionally move past what she did. I laid down firm boundaries for any potential future physical interactions, making sure to record our conversation on my phone. I told her explicitly that these terms were not about reconciliation or any hidden longing to rebuild what we once had. I warned that what was happening between us could be just a form of emotional confusion, something therapists call hysterical bonding, and that it wasn't healthy or productive. I made it clear that I wouldn't be gentle or attentive to her emotional needs during these moments. She silently nodded, her eyes damp, and whispered that she probably deserved the pain before positioning herself without protest. The next morning, I woke to find her curled up behind me. I lay there silently, listening to her breathing shift. I could feel her watching me. Without turning to face her, I asked what her meeting was about. She said it was with a human resources representative and that she wasn't expecting a good outcome. I responded with a simple agreement. She then asked if there was anything she could do to make things right or to restore some balance between us. I told her there was nothing left she could offer. She floated the idea of an open marriage where she would remain faithful and I could be with others. I laughed and turned the idea down flat. Trust had already been broken, and that wasn't something she could ever return to me. We kept talking while I faced away from her. Seeing her face only stirred up more bitterness. I asked her what it was about our marriage that made her feel so trapped. She told me I had done everything right, that I was more than enough. I gave a bitter laugh, noting how that hadn't stopped her from seeking out something else. She described her affair as an escape, a thrill she couldn't resist. She confessed she hadn't realized how deeply it would hurt once it all came to light. At my therapy session, I talked about my career plans and the feedback I'd gotten from my job applications. We discussed my intrusive thoughts and the actions I needed to take to address them. My therapist listened with understanding and without judgment. He urged me to take a moment to pause and reflect whenever those dark thoughts surfaced. The session was short, but afterward, I felt an unusual calm, like everything was suspended, nothing pressing, just being. When I got home, she was sitting in the living room. She told me she'd been terminated for breaking confidentiality and mismanaging client data. I replied simply that it was unfortunate. I then exercised and cooked a decent meal, which she joined me for. We ate in near silence. Afterward, she mentioned that the other man had also lost his job. I replied with a short acknowledgement. She said she hadn't been in touch with him for 5 days. I asked her why not. Now that they were both unencumbered, she was free to join her supposed soulmate. She looked at me and insisted that I was the only one she wanted. I reminded her that she had all of me once, and it still wasn't enough. I reflected on our nearly 2 decades together, pointing out how I had remained loyal despite countless temptations. I'd made sacrifices, putting aside dreams of medical school and accepting children even though that wasn't what I had envisioned, because I believed in the love we shared. Now, all I felt was resentment and regret, believing those sacrifices were wasted. I told her that if I had the chance to go back, I would urge my 26-year-old self to walk away from her. She asked one final time if there was any way to mend things between us. I told her I would never compromise for her again, and that meant a healthy relationship between us was impossible. I made it clear that I would never love her again. I've made the decision to step away from it all. Remaining in this environment only serves as a constant trigger, dragging me back into memories I'd rather move on from. I packed up and moved out roughly 3 days after my last update. Since then, my soon-to-be ex-wife has been bombarding me with messages and leaving handwritten notes on my car and apartment door. I've kept my lawyer informed, and he's recommended that I consider a firm cease and desist letter. I'm leaning toward going forward with that. My therapist has complimented the strides I've made in managing the anger, grief, and depressive episodes that once consumed me. I agree, I do feel stronger. The night before I moved out, we were physically intimate for the last time. I made it clear that it meant nothing to me and would not change my decision regarding reconciliation. She said she understood, but the nonstop texts and dramatic gestures suggest otherwise. She received the divorce papers during the first week of October. Since then, her efforts to win me back have escalated into overwhelming and, at times, unsettling behavior. If she truly intends not to contest the proceedings, everything should wrap up by January. But if she decides to fight, I'm prepared for that as well. About a week after losing her job, she managed to land a new position, a clear reminder of how useful strong connections can be. Personally, I'm doing better. I've accepted her failings both as a partner and as a person. I told her plainly that forgiveness isn't something I'll be offering. I'm only choosing to accept what happened and focus on building my own future. In the past 3 weeks, I experienced 2 unexpected but heartening surprises. My stepdaughters came to visit. I made it clear they shouldn't feel obligated, especially if their mother had pressured them to come. My oldest stepdaughter insisted it was her choice. During the visit, both of them told me they had spoken with their mother about the affair and our past. The oldest, who had always been cold toward me, offered an apology. She admitted her long-standing resentment was based on a misunderstanding. When I first met them, their mother and I had been together for around 4 months. Back then, there was some overlap with a former on-again, off-again boyfriend she had been involved with. Before me, she also had an inconsistent relationship with another man, whom the girls had never met. Her first marriage ended in betrayal, and despite attempts to salvage it, she ended up in a revenge relationship with that former boyfriend. My stepdaughters had mistakenly believed I was that man. Their father often criticized their mother's infidelity, yet he conveniently left out his own unfaithfulness. So, after all this time, my oldest stepdaughter apologized for misjudging me. She acknowledged how wrong her assumptions had been. That weekend brought a flood of emotion and highlighted just how much harm dishonesty and betrayal can cause in families. I also want to clarify the rumors surrounding the intimacy my ex-wife requested right before I left. She's always been drawn to certain private preferences, particularly within the realm of control and trust. I wasn't especially interested in those dynamics but tried to learn and participate, even attending courses and workshops. Despite my efforts, she accused me of not offering enough emotional support afterward. but I've had enough of trying to meet her ever-changing demands. She no longer has the right to expect anything from me. Along with my respect, she lost that privilege, and in a marriage, that's often the final blow. The second surprise came from a longtime coworker from a different department. I've decided to stay on as an as-needed part-time worker. Life has taken a few unexpected turns lately. The rumors about my divorce have spread in the hospital. I now wear my wedding band on a chain around my neck. When coworker invited me out for a drink, I was upfront. I wasn't open to any romantic involvement. I told her plainly that I wouldn't be around much longer. She simply smiled, gently squeezed my hand, and said she wasn't looking for anything serious, just a little fun and connection. She's been staying over occasionally, and I've genuinely enjoyed our time together. She even helped me organize my carry-on luggage and took me to and from the airport for an interview in Portland. That interview went exceptionally well, and I've also been contacted by a travel agency with several potential opportunities. I'm seriously considering taking one of the travel gigs and living with my parents between contracts. It's a thrilling and slightly terrifying feeling to have this much freedom, to be entirely unbound, not responsible for anyone else, all at once. My lawyer has confirmed that, due to the no-fault nature of our state's divorce laws, there won't be any alimony or spousal support. However, the documented infidelity could affect how our shared assets are divided, possibly tipping the scales in my favor by as much. The house is definitely going to be sold, and after reviewing the realtor's comparisons, it's evident that the payout will be quite substantial. Of course, no amount of money can truly compensate for nearly 15 years that feel lost. Lately, I've been toying with the idea of embarking on a 3-month journey across Europe. There's been a noticeable shift in my mindset. I'm not exactly thriving just yet, but I'm in a far better space than I was before. The heavy gloom that once lingered is starting to lift, and for the first time in a while, I can glimpse a horizon that looks much brighter.